These machines were not designed to keep you alive. They were designed to win. Keeping you alive was someone else's problem. 10 cars, real stories, and at least 3 of them killed people doing exactly what they were built to do. If you have ever watched vintage racing footage and thought, how did anyone survive that? Stick around, because some of them didn't. Subscribe before we start. Number 10. The BRMP 83. 16 cylinders. Not 8, not 12, 16. Arranged in an H configuration that no one had ever tried in a Formula One car and that, in hindsight, absolutely no one should have. The British Racing Motors team built this thing because they wanted more power than anyone else on the grid. Reasonable goal. Unreasonable execution. The H16 produced somewhere around 400 horsepower when it actually ran. That last part is the problem. It vibrated so violently that it shook its own components apart mid-race. Oil lines cracked. Electrical connections failed. Drivers described the feeling as sitting on top of a running washing machine, except the washing machine was doing 170 miles per hour. Jackie Stewart drove it. Jackie Stewart, one of the greatest drivers who ever lived, said it was the most terrifying car he had ever put in a racing harness. It finished a race exactly once in its entire career. And that one win came because every other car in front of it broke down first. Up next, a car that did not just scare the drivers, it scared the entire sport. Number 9. The Lotus 56B. No gearbox, a turbine engine, and a 4-wheel drive system that made it almost impossible to catch when it started to slide. Colin Chapman built cars the way some people play poker. All in, every time, on a read that might be completely wrong. The 56B used a Pratt & Whitney turbine engine originally developed for helicopters. It produced around 500 horsepower and had a throttle response lag of approximately 2 seconds. 2 seconds. At race speed, 2 seconds is the difference between a corner and a wall. Emerson Fittipaldi tested it. He came back and told Chapman it was undrivable. Chapman entered it at Monza anyway. Dave Walker qualified it, then lost control on the banking. Nobody was seriously hurt, but that was luck, not engineering. The FIA banned turbine engines from Formula One shortly after. The 56B had made its point. Number 8 is where it starts to get genuinely disturbing. Number 8, the Alfa Romeo Bimotore. 2 engines. One in the front, one in the back. Both running at the same time. Enzo Ferrari commissioned this. Before he built his own cars, before the prancing horse meant anything to anyone, Enzo Ferrari managed the Alfa Romeo racing team, and in 1935, he decided that if one engine was good, 2 engines was obviously better. The combined output was somewhere around 540 horsepower. In 1935, in a car with drum brakes, no downforce, no aerodynamic grip, just raw power, and a driver who either had extraordinary faith in physics or had stopped thinking about consequences. Tazio Nuvolari drove it. Nuvolari was not a man who worried much about consequences. He once raced with 2 broken legs. He is the reason we use the phrase, committed to the corner. The Bimotore hit 220 miles per hour on the straight at Avis. 220. In 1935, on a road. It was also nearly impossible to steer at high speed, burned through tires in minutes, and had a braking distance that Nuvolari himself described as optimistic. It won nothing major, but it proved something. It proved that the limit of a racing car was not the engine. It was everything else around it. 3 more entries before we hit the car that changed safety regulations forever. Number 7. The Mercedes W196. This one is complicated. Because on paper, the W196 is not a dangerous car. It is a masterpiece. Desmodromic valves, a straight-8 engine with fuel injection at a time when carburetors were standard. Streamlined bodywork so advanced that the other teams thought Mercedes had bent the rules. Juan Manuel Fangio won the 1954 and 1955 World Championships in it. That is the paper version. Here is the real version. The streamliner body, the one that looked like a spaceship, covered the wheels entirely, which meant drivers had almost no visual reference for where the car ended and the track began. At Reims in 1954, on a fast circuit where the streamliner should have excelled, Fangio drove mostly by memory and feel. Carl Kling ran wide at 180 miles per hour because he misjudged his width by less than a foot. Mercedes switched to the open-wheel version after Reims. The streamliner was beautiful. It was also nearly impossible to place accurately at racing speed. And then 1955 happened, and the W196 is forever connected to the worst day in motorsport history. Le Mans, June 11th, 1955. A Mercedes 300 SLR, not the W196, but the same program, the same team, launched into the crowd after a collision. 83 spectators died. Mercedes withdrew from racing that day. They did not return to Formula One for 39 years. The W196 itself never caused a fatality, but it raced inside a program that changed how the world thought about speed. Number 6. The 1955 Jaguar D-Type. The D-Type won Le Mans 3 times. It is one of the most beautiful racing cars ever built. Long nose, curved headrest fairing, disc brakes that were revolutionary. It also had a tendency, in certain conditions, at certain speeds, to become airborne. Not dramatically, not like a jump, more like a gentle, fatal lift. The aerodynamics were designed for the Mulsanne straight, where the D-Type was extraordinary. But at other circuits, particularly in crosswinds, the nose would generate lift instead of pressing down. Mike Hawthorne described driving it in a crosswind as praying and steering. He said that as someone who had won in it. Imagine what the drivers who had not won in it thought. Number 5. The Chaparral 2F. American. Fiberglass, automatic transmission, and a wing the size of a dining room table mounted so high above the car it looked like an engineering joke. It was not a joke. Jim Hall built the Chaparral 2F in Texas, and Jim Hall did not make jokes with engineering. That wing generated real downforce, massive downforce, more than any car had ever produced in 1967. It was also controlled by a third pedal in the cockpit. The driver managed the wing angle with their left foot while braking and accelerating with the right. In theory, brilliant. In practice, one moment of crossed feet and you have lost either all your downforce or all your braking on the same corner. Phil Hill drove it. Phil Hill was a Formula One world champion. He said the 2F was the most demanding car he had ever driven, and he had driven some things that should legally not have existed. The 2F won the BOAC 500 at Brands Hatch in 1967. Then it broke down at every major race after that. The wing concept survived. The 2F itself did not. Number 4. You know it is coming. Number 4. The Porsche 917. Sit with that for a second. Because the 917 is one of those cars where the legend and the reality have spent 50 years quietly disagreeing with each other. The legend is Steve McQueen and a movie and the most beautiful racing liveries ever put on a car. The reality is that the original 917, the first version, the 1969 version, was described by factory test driver Brian Redman as absolutely terrifying. His exact words, not mine. The original 917 had no aerodynamic stability above 200 miles per hour. It generated lift at the rear, at Le Mans speeds. Lift at the rear. John Wolfe crashed fatally on the opening lap of the 1969 Le Mans race while driving a privately entered 917. It was his first Le Mans. Porsche knew the car had a problem. They worked through the winter. Ferdinand Piëch, and this detail matters, Ferdinand Piëch reportedly told his engineers that if they could not fix the aerodynamics, the drivers would simply have to manage it. That is one version of the story. Porsche disputes it. What is not disputed? The 917K, the short-tail version with the revised aerodynamics, was a completely different car. Stable, fast, dominant. It won Le Mans in 1970 and 1971. The same basic machine, totally different behavior. The difference between those two versions is one of the most important chapters in the history of aerodynamics. Would you have gotten in the 1969 version, knowing what they knew? Number 3. There is something I want to say about the Lancia D50. Not what it was, but what happened to it. In 1955, the same year as Le Mans, Lancia collapsed financially. The D50, which was genuinely one of the most innovative Formula One cars ever built, was handed to Ferrari. Ferrari rebadged it, raced it, won with it, and Eugenio Castellotti drove the original D50 before the transfer, while it was still a Lancia, at speeds that the car's brakes were not designed to handle. He pushed because that was what you did. You pushed because the car in front was faster, because your name was on the entry list, because walking away was something other people did. Castellotti died in 1957, not in a race, testing a Ferrari at Modena, alone on the circuit. He was 26. The D50 itself is remembered as an engineering achievement. What it cost, that part is quieter. Number 2 is the one people forget. They should not. Number 2, the Auto Union Type C, 850 horsepower. That number does not sound right for 1936. I know, it is right. The Auto Union Type C, with its supercharged V16, produced somewhere between 520 and 850 horsepower, depending on the boost setting and the circuit and who you are willing to believe. The exact figure was never officially released. Mid-engine layout, rear-wheel drive, 18-inch tires that looked like bicycle wheels by modern standards, and all that power going to the back in a car with a center of gravity nobody fully understood on circuits that were partly public roads. Bernd Rosemeyer drove this car. Rosemeyer was, by consensus, the only driver of his era who could fully extract what the Type C offered. Other drivers, experienced, accomplished drivers, got in and immediately reported that it was trying to kill them. Not figure of speech, trying to kill them. Hans Stuck called it a car that rewards total commitment and punishes any hesitation with instant death. Rosemeyer died in January 1938, not racing, setting a land speed record on an Autobahn in the Type C's successor, the D-Type Streamliner. A gust of wind caught the car at over 400 kilometers per hour. He was 28 years old. His wife, Ellie Beinhorn, one of the most famous aviators in Germany, found out at the airfield when she landed after a flight. That detail is not in most articles about Rosemeyer. I think it should be. Number 1. There is a photograph of the Grover Williams car at the 1936 French Grand Prix. Actually, let me start somewhere else. Let me start with the 1937 Vanderbilt Cup, because what I want to talk about for number one is not a single car. It is an era. The pre-war Grand Prix era, 1934 to 1939. No displacement limit, no power limit, no meaningful aerodynamic regulation, no roll hoops, no seatbelts. Seatbelts were considered a death trap because you wanted to be thrown clear. No barriers, no runoff. The circuits were public roads, literally. Closed for the day, hay bales at the corners, spectators standing on the verge. The dominant cars were the Mercedes W125 and the Auto Union Type C. The W125 produced 646 horsepower in race trim. It weighed 750 kilograms. The power-to-weight ratio of a 1937 Mercedes W125 is comparable to a modern Formula One car. On public roads, with hay bales, Rudolf Caracciola drove the W125 to a land speed record of 432 kilometers per hour on a public autobahn in 1938. In the rain, 3 drivers from that era died in racing accidents in a single 18-month period. Rosemeyer in January 1938, Dick Seaman at Spa in 1939, Pat Fairfield at Le Mans in 1937. These were not fringe competitors. These were factory works drivers for the most powerful automotive companies in the world. The cars were extraordinary. The regulations were almost non-existent. The gap between what was possible and what was survivable was nothing. There was no gap. Every car on this list had engineers, had teams, had people who cared, at some level, whether the driver came home. The pre-war monsters had that too. They just also had no rules telling them where dangerous ended. One question for the comments. If you could have been in that paddock, 1937, Nürburgring, as a spectator, not a driver, would you have gone? If you want to go deeper on any of these cars, the 917 in particular has a full story that we have barely touched. Let me know below. And if you watched this far, you probably belong here. Subscribe. More of this coming. These cars were not built to last. Most of them barely did. But they lasted long enough to matter.